The Sterling Manor ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, 200 guests draped in designer silk and practiced smiles. Champagne flutes caught the light like tiny stars. Everyone who mattered in San Francisco society had made the drive north. Tech moguls, real estate titans, old money families whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. The kind of people who measured worth in zeros and connections. When Sophia Sterling walked through the arched entrance, conversation stuttered. Not because of her dress, elegant navy blue, understated in a room of peacocks, but because of the man beside her. He wore a gray suit that had seen better years, no cufflinks glinting at his wrists, no watch that cost more than a car payment. He looked like someone who'd wandered in from a coffee shop on the wrong side of town. Whispers rippled outward like stones dropped in still water. Eyes tracked their movement across the polished marble floor.
Sophia's fingers tightened on his arm, just slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the judgment pressing in from all sides. At the altar, Marcus Richardson stood beside his bride, Diana Sterling. The officiant droned through the ceremony's opening words. Marcus smiled at his future wife, radiant in her Vera Wang gown, but his gaze drifted over her shoulder, a habit born from years of watching rooms, reading crowds, looking for opportunities. His eyes landed on the man in the gray suit. Color drained from Marcus's face like water from a broken glass. His lips hovered an inch from Diana's, frozen in the moment before the kiss that would seal their union. But he wasn't looking at his bride anymore. He released her hands and stepped back from the altar. The ballroom held its breath. But that moment, the one where everything shattered, came 6 hours later.
4 weeks before the wedding, Evan Hart sat in the corner booth of Rosewood Cafe, tucked between a vintage bookstore and an artisan bakery on Maple Street in Portland's quiet Burnside district. The cafe smelled like old paper and espresso, a combination that settled into your clothes and stayed there. Tuesday morning, 8:30, the place nearly empty except for a college student typing furiously near the window and an older man working through the crossword puzzle by the register. Evan came here every Tuesday and Thursday morning after dropping his daughter at school during the weeks she stayed with him. The routine had become sacred over the past year, not because the coffee was exceptional or the atmosphere particularly welcoming, but because nobody here knew who he was. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wanted anything. He had a paperback open in front of him, something about Cold War espionage, but the words blurred together. Mostly he just sat, existed, let the world move around him without demanding he participate. The book was a prop, a signal that he preferred solitude. The cafe door opened, bell chiming soft against the hiss of the espresso machine. A woman walked in, 40-something, jeans and a loose gray sweater, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying weight nobody else could see. She ordered black coffee and sat at the table directly across from his booth. Didn't ask permission, didn't make eye contact. Just set her bag down and settled into the chair like she'd been doing it for years. Evan glanced up briefly. Their eyes met for half a second, a mutual acknowledgement that meant nothing and everything. Then he went back to his book, and she stared out the window at the gray Portland morning. That was how it started. No words, no introduction, just two people occupying the same quiet space.
She came back the following Tuesday. Same table, same black coffee, same tired eyes. This time she brought a laptop and worked in silence, fingers moving across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd answered the same emails 1,000 times. Evan didn't ask what she did. She didn't ask what he was reading. The unspoken agreement held. By the third week, Evan found himself arriving a few minutes earlier than usual, though he'd never admit why. The woman, still nameless, still a stranger, had become part of the landscape, a fixture as reliable as the burnt smell from the bakery next door, or the way sunlight never quite reached the corner booth. Thursday of week 3, she forgot her laptop charger. Her computer died halfway through whatever she was working on. She sighed and closed it, leaning back in her chair with the posture of someone who just lost a battle they fought every day. Evan kept his eyes on his book, but he could feel her restlessness bleeding across the narrow space between their tables. Her voice cut through the silence, quiet but deliberate. "Do you ever feel like the world is too loud?" She wasn't looking at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on her empty coffee cup, turning it slowly between her hands. Evan set his book down. "Every day." She smiled, barely, a crack in the careful facade. "Good. I thought it was just me." That was the first real thing they said to each other. Her name was Sophia. She didn't offer a last name, and Evan didn't provide his. She told him she worked in real estate, vague enough to mean anything, specific enough to feel like truth. He said he did consulting in the financial sector, which was technically accurate if you counted anonymous venture capital investments as consulting. They talked about books she'd read years ago but remembered fondly, about the way Portland rain felt different than rain anywhere else, heavier somehow. About the small frustrations of modern life, automated phone systems, traffic that made no sense, coffee that cost too much and tasted like cardboard. Nothing important. Nothing that required honesty beyond the surface. And it felt like the first genuine conversation Evan had experienced in 12 years. After that, the pattern solidified. Tuesdays and Thursdays, same corner of Rosewood Cafe, same rhythm of comfortable silence, punctuated by occasional words. Sophia never wore anything expensive, never mentioned money or business beyond the vague real estate label. Evan never mentioned his daughter, his past, the life he'd left behind in Silicon Valley. They existed in a bubble, protected from context. One Thursday in the 4th week, Sophia showed up looking worse than usual. She dropped into her chair like gravity had doubled, rubbed her face with both hands, and ordered 2 shots of espresso instead of her usual black coffee. Evan waited. That was their way, offering space, not demanding explanations. But she kept talking anyway. "My family thinks I don't have a life. They're right. But the second I try to do something for myself, they have opinions about it." He closed his book and gave her his full attention. "What kind of opinions?" "The kind that come with conditions." She looked at him directly, searching for something he couldn't name. "Do you have family like that?" The question hit deeper than she probably intended. "I don't have much family left. But I remember what it's like to be controlled by people who think they know better." Sophia nodded slowly, processing. "I wish I could just disappear sometimes. Just be nobody." Evan understood that more than she could possibly know. For 12 years, he'd been exactly nobody. He'd walked away from a name that opened doors and closed others, from a reputation that preceded him into every room, from expectations that suffocated more than they elevated. He'd become a ghost in his own industry, operating through intermediaries and legal structures so complex that even people who owed him everything had never seen his face. He'd built a life around invisibility, and sitting across from this exhausted woman who wanted the same thing, he felt something shift. Not attraction, at least not primarily. More like recognition. She was running from the same thing he'd been running from, just coming at it from a different angle. They kept meeting. The weeks blurred together in the best possible way. Sophia started smiling more, genuine expressions that reached her eyes. She laughed at his dry observations about the other cafe regulars, at the way the barista always spelled names wrong on purpose just to see if anyone would correct her. Evan found himself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays in a way he hadn't looked forward to anything since Lily was small enough to ride on his shoulders. Sophia made him feel normal. Not wealthy, not powerful, not burdened by the weight of decisions that affected hundreds of people he'd never meet. Just normal. She made him feel seen, without knowing anything real about him, which should have been a warning. Friday evening, Evan sat in his modest apartment, 2 bedrooms, decent light, furniture from estate sales and second-hand stores because buying new felt wasteful when perfectly good things already existed. His daughter sprawled on the couch, phone in hand but attention focused on him. Lily was 14 going on 40, observant in ways that unnerved him sometimes. She had her mother's eyes, but his tendency toward brutal honesty. She set her phone down. "You sound different lately." Evan looked up from the dinner he was preparing. Stir-fry, simple, using vegetables from the farmer's market. Different how? Happy different. She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. "You met someone." He kept his hands busy, chopping bell peppers into uniform strips. "Just a friend. Someone who doesn't know anything about before." "Good." Lily pulled her knees up to her chest. "You deserve that, Dad." But her expression shifted, something darker creeping in. "What happens when she finds out?" Evan's knife paused mid-cut. "She won't. That's the point." "Dad." Lily's voice carried that particular tone she used when she thought he was being deliberately obtuse. "If you really like her, she needs to know who you are." "She knows who I am. The me that matters." His daughter gave him a look that made him feel like the child in the room. "Does she? Or does she just know the version you're showing her?" The question sat between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Evan wanted to argue, to explain that there was no real difference between Evan the cafe regular and Evan the anonymous investor who'd reshaped Silicon Valley from the shadows. But Lily had met enough of her mother's society friends to know exactly how people changed when they learned about money. She didn't want him hurt, but she also knew secrets had consequences. They ate dinner in relative silence after that, talking about her homework and the drama with her friend group and whether she should try out for the soccer team. Normal things, safe things. But the question lingered. What happens when she finds out? Thursday of week 5, Sophia didn't show up. Evan waited an hour, telling himself it didn't matter. People had lives. Meetings ran long. Maybe she'd simply decided not to come. But the cafe felt different without her. The silence pressed down instead of offering relief. The following Tuesday, she still didn't appear. Evan sat in his usual booth, book unopened, coffee growing cold. He'd spent years perfecting the art of not needing people, of finding contentment in solitude. One woman's absence shouldn't have rattled him. Yet here he was, rattled. Thursday, she finally walked in, but she looked different, polished instead of tired. Her hair was styled, she wore a blazer over dark jeans, minimal makeup that somehow made her look more like herself and less at the same time. She looked like someone important, which she'd never looked before. She sat across from him and set a cream-colored envelope on the table. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind of thing that cost more than it should. Her voice came out steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "I need to ask you something. You can say no. I'll understand if you do." Evan looked at the envelope, then at her. "What is it?" "My sister's getting married. 2 weeks from now, big event.
My whole family will be there.
She paused, gathering something. I don't want to go alone. The request landed like a stone in still water. Evan had been to events like that before, in another life, when his calendar was full of galas and fundraisers and networking dinners where everyone smiled too much and meant too little. He knew exactly what kind of scrutiny came with walking into a room full of wealthy strangers. He knew what they'd see when they looked at him. You want me to come with you? I know it's a lot to ask. I know we don't really know each other that well. Sophia's words came faster, like she needed to get them out before losing nerve. But I feel like I can breathe when I'm around you. I don't feel that way around anyone else, especially not at events like this. Evan picked up the envelope. The weight of it spoke volumes, embossed printing, probably hand-delivered, the kind of invitation that wasn't really an invitation so much as a summons.
What kind of event are we talking about? Sophia looked down at her hands. The kind where people judge you based on your last name and your net worth? The kind where I have to smile and pretend I'm not being suffocated. Every instinct Evan had developed over 12 years of careful invisibility screamed at him to decline, to make an excuse, to protect the bubble they'd created here in this cafe where nobody knew anything about anything that mattered. But he looked at her, really looked, and saw the same desperation he'd felt a dozen years ago when the walls closed in and the only solution was to disappear. Why me? Because you don't care about any of that. Because you see me, not the version of me everyone else expects. Evan thought about his daughter, about the quiet life he'd built, about the fact that he'd spent years avoiding rooms full of people who thought they were better than him based on nothing but inherited wealth and cultivated connections. But he also thought about Sophia, about the way she'd walked into this cafe looking for the same thing he'd been looking for, a place where she could just be. The decision was probably a mistake. He knew that, even as he made it. Okay, I'll go with you. Her expression shifted through relief and gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Fear, maybe. You don't have to dress up or anything, just be yourself. That's all I need. Evan nodded, but even as he agreed, he felt the weight of what he was walking into. He'd been to events like this before. He knew exactly how people like Sophia's family would look at someone like him. Someone in an off-the-rack suit, no pedigree, no obvious wealth to justify his presence. He knew, and he went anyway. The next week passed in a strange suspension. Sophia texted him for the first time, a simple message thanking him for agreeing to come, acknowledging it would be uncomfortable, but expressing relief he'd be there. Evan stared at the message for a long time before replying. The distance between them was starting to close in ways that made the eventual collision feel inevitable. 3 days before the wedding, Sophia showed him another message during their Thursday cafe meeting. This one from her sister Diana. The text was polite, carefully worded, but underneath the politeness lived something sharp. Looking forward to meeting your guest. Took the liberty of sending over a few wardrobe suggestions just so he feels comfortable. You know how formal these things can be. Attached were links to designer suits. Armani, Tom Ford, Brioni. Each one cost more than Evan's monthly rent. Sophia's jaw tightened as she handed him her phone. Her voice came out flat. She's testing you. She's testing both of us. Sophia met his eyes, searching for something. You don't have to wear any of that. I don't care what you wear. But she does. Sophia didn't deny it. Evan handed the phone back. I'll wear what I always wear. If that's a problem for her, she can take it up with you. Something flickered across Sophia's face, gratitude mixed with apprehension. They're going to judge you. I know. They're going to make you feel like you don't belong. I know that too. She studied him for a long moment, this woman he barely knew but somehow understood. Then why are you still coming? Evan thought about it. He thought about the cafe, about the way Sophia's shoulders relaxed when she sat across from him, about the fact that she'd trusted him with something real in a world that seemed to trade only in performance. Because you asked. And because I know what it's like to be controlled by people who think they know better. The answer seemed to satisfy something in her, though the worry didn't fully leave her eyes. That night, Evan called Lily. She was at her mother's place in San Francisco, the house he used to live in, back when his life had been completely different. The custody arrangement gave him alternating weeks, which meant constant transitions, but also meant Lily got to experience both worlds, the quiet Portland life he'd built, and the society circles her mother still moved through. His daughter picked up on the second ring. Hey, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. How's your week going? They talked about school, about her friends, about the drama that seemed to consume teenage lives with an intensity that felt both trivial and desperately important. Then Lily's tone shifted. So, who is she? Evan should have known better than to think he could hide anything from his daughter. What makes you think there's a she? Dad, come on. Lily's voice carried affectionate exasperation. You've been different. Lighter. I can hear it, even over the phone. He found himself smiling, despite the complexity of the situation. I met someone. At the cafe I go to. She invited me to a family wedding. Dad, that's great! Genuine enthusiasm, which made what came next harder. Why do you sound worried? Her family is wealthy, traditional. I'm not sure they'll approve of someone like me. Lily laughed, the sound sharp with irony. Someone like you? Dad, you're literally... She doesn't know about that, and I want to keep it that way. Silence on the other end, heavy with things unsaid. Then, carefully, but Dad, if you really like her, she needs to know who you are. She knows who I am. The me that matters. Does she? Lily's voice softened, but the question cut deep. Or does she just know the version you're showing her? The same question she'd asked before, but it hit differently now, with a wedding invitation sitting on his kitchen counter and 2 days left to change his mind. I've seen how people change when they find out about money, Lily. Your mother's friends, the families at your school, they look at you differently. They want different things. Mom wasn't like that at first, though, was she? The observation stung because it was accurate. Rebecca had fallen in love with Evan Hartley, the grad student, the guy with big ideas and bigger ambition. It was only later, after success came and the money followed, that she'd fallen in love with the lifestyle instead of the person. No, she wasn't. So maybe this woman won't be either. Maybe she'll be different. Evan wanted to believe that, wanted it more than he'd wanted anything in years. But 12 years of careful isolation had taught him that wanting didn't make something true. They talked a while longer before saying goodnight. After hanging up, Evan sat in his small apartment and looked at the gray suit hanging in his closet. Clean, well-fitted, unremarkable. The suit of someone who didn't matter, which was exactly what he'd wanted to be for 12 years. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Evan put on the gray suit, looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, and saw exactly what Sophia's family would see. A man who didn't belong in their world. But he'd promised, and unlike many things in his life, his word still meant something. Sophia picked him up in a car that cost more than his annual rent, sleek black Mercedes with a driver in a crisp uniform. The first real display of wealth, and it made the gulf between their worlds suddenly visible. She looked beautiful. Her dress was elegant dark blue, simple lines that probably cost more than they appeared to. Her hair was styled in soft waves, makeup understated but professional. She looked like someone important, which she'd carefully avoided looking like at the cafe. She smiled when she saw him, but tension lived behind her eyes. "You look great." Evan climbed into the car, settling into leather seats that probably cost more than his entire furniture collection. "You look nervous."
I am. They didn't talk much during the drive. The landscape shifted from Portland's urban density to rural highways to the kind of private estate that required an invitation just to find. Sterling Manor sat at the end of a tree-lined drive, all stone and glass and careful architecture that whispered old money. Evan had been in places like this before, had owned a place not dissimilar back when his name appeared on Forbes lists and industry publications. He knew the language of wealth, the performance of it. He just hadn't spoken it in a very long time. As they approached the entrance, Sophia took his hand. Her grip was tight, almost desperate. "Whatever happens today, I'm glad you're here." Evan looked at her, at this woman who'd found him in a cafe and decided he was worth knowing without knowing anything real about him, and felt the weight of the deception settling into his bones. "Me too." But the thought that followed, unbidden and unwelcome, she won't be glad in a few hours. The valet took the car keys. Evan and Sophia walked through the entrance into a world of marble fountains and designer gowns and practiced smiles that meant everything and nothing. Every head turned. Conversations stuttered. Eyes tracked their movement with the subtle aggression of people accustomed to judging worth at a glance. A man in a suit that cost $5,000 looked Evan up and down, expression carefully neutral, but message clear. A woman in pearls and Chanel whispered to her companion, hand partially covering her mouth, but not enough to hide the smirk. Sophia's fingers tightened on Evan's arm. "Ignore them." "I am." But he wasn't. He saw every look, felt every judgment, cataloged every moment of casual cruelty that wealthy people inflicted without even realizing they were doing it. Because to them, this wasn't cruelty. This was simply order, the natural hierarchy of the world, and he was disrupting it by existing in their space. They found seats near the front, third row, which Sophia's mother had apparently deemed appropriate for her eldest daughter and the unsuitable date she'd brought. Not front row where family belonged, but close enough to maintain appearances. Catherine Sterling sat in the first row, silver hair perfectly coiffed, posture rigid with the kind of control that came from decades of social performance. She glanced back once, eyes sweeping over Evan with the efficiency of someone conducting an audit. Her expression remained neutral, but Evan had spent enough years in boardrooms to recognize assessment when he saw it. He'd been weighed and found wanting before they'd even spoken. The ceremony began. 200 guests settled into manufactured reverence. The officiant spoke about love and commitment in words that had been spoken at 1,000 weddings and would be spoken at 1,000 more. Diana Sterling walked down the aisle in her elaborate gown, looking like every bride looked, beautiful and terrified and certain all at once. Marcus Richardson waited at the altar in a custom suit, his expression carefully composed. He looked successful, which he was, confident, which he'd earned, happy, which Evan hoped was genuine. Evan had never seen Marcus Richardson's face before today. They'd communicated exclusively through lawyers and intermediaries for 3 years. That had been the agreement, complete anonymity in exchange for the capital that saved Richardson Biotech from bankruptcy.
$15 million transferred through a maze of LLCs and offshore accounts, all leading back to the pseudonym J. Vale. The investment had paid off spectacularly. Richardson Biotech had developed 3 promising therapies sold to a pharmaceutical giant for $800 million, made Marcus Richardson wealthy enough to marry into the Sterling family.
And Marcus had never known who to thank. Until now. The officiant droned through the standard text. Diana and Marcus exchanged vows they'd probably written themselves, but sounded like everyone else's. The moment approached when the groom would kiss the bride, and 200 people would applaud and pretend they believed in forever. Marcus turned toward Diana, lifting the veil from her face. But his eyes drifted over her shoulder, scanning the crowd in that restless way successful people had, always watching, always cataloging, always looking for the next opportunity. His gaze landed on Evan. For a moment, nothing happened. Marcus's expression stayed carefully neutral, smile still in place. But something shifted behind his eyes, recognition firing, memory connecting dots that shouldn't have connected. The color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. His lips hovered an inch from Diana's, frozen in the instant before contact. But he wasn't looking at his bride anymore. He was staring past her, past the officiant, past the front row of family and into the third row, where Evan sat perfectly still. Diana noticed first. "Marcus?" But her fiancé didn't respond. He just stood there, staring, as understanding dawned across his features in real time. Then Marcus released Diana's hands and stepped back from the altar. The officiant cleared his throat, uncertain. "You may now—" But Marcus was already walking down the steps, past the front row where Catherine Sterling sat frozen in shock, past the bridesmaids who exchanged nervous glances. He walked directly toward Evan with the single-minded focus of someone who'd just seen a ghost. The ballroom went silent. 200 people held their breath. Sophia's hand tightened on Evan's arm, confusion radiating from her. "What's happening?" Evan didn't answer, couldn't answer, because he knew exactly what was about to happen, and there was no way to stop it. Marcus stopped in front of their row. He looked at Evan Hart sitting in his off-the-rack gray suit, this man who'd been judged and dismissed by everyone in the room. And Marcus Richardson dropped to one knee. The word came out quiet but clear, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Sir?" Sophia stared at Marcus, then at Evan, trying to understand what was happening. Around them, phones appeared in hands. Guests leaned forward. The moment crystallized into something that would be remembered, discussed, dissected. Marcus's voice shook slightly. 3 years ago, you saved my company. When every investor had walked away, when I was 90 days from bankruptcy, when the banks wouldn't touch me, you believed in me. You gave me $15 million when no one else would risk a dime. The whispers started, rolling through the ballroom like thunder. Evan sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable even as his world collapsed. Marcus continued, eyes wet. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't have any of this. Richardson Biotech, this wedding, this life. I owe you everything." Someone in the back said the name first, tentative, questioning. Then others picked it up, passed it forward, until it became a wave crashing over the careful order of the ceremony. J. Vale. That's J. Vale. The J. Vale? Marcus straightened, addressing the room now instead of just Evan. His voice carried the weight of genuine emotion, gratitude so deep it bordered on worship. This man is Jay Vale. Some of you have heard the name. Most of you have spent years trying to find him. He's the investor who's funded half the startups in this city, the one who turned no names into empires. And he did it all without ever asking for credit. The ballroom erupted. People stood, phones recorded. Catherine Sterling's hand flew to her mouth. Diana remained frozen at the altar, bouquet hanging limp in her hands. Sophia turned to Evan, her face pale. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Jay Vale. Evan finally moved, standing slowly. His hand slipped from Sophia's grip as she pulled away, instinctive recoil from something she didn't understand. He looked at Marcus with something close to exhaustion. This wasn't supposed to happen. Marcus shook his head. I know you don't want attention, but I couldn't let you sit here and be treated like you don't matter. Not after everything you've done. Evan's jaw tightened. He glanced at Sophia, saw her staring at him like he was a stranger, like he'd become someone else in the space of 30 seconds, which, in her eyes, he had. We should go. But before he could move, Catherine Sterling was there. She'd crossed the ballroom in seconds, heels clicking against marble with purpose. She reached for Evan's hand, her expression transformed into something warm and desperate. Mr. Vale, I had no idea. If I'd known, if any of us had known. Evan pulled his hand back. You didn't need to know. But we do now. Catherine's smile was too wide, too eager. And we're so honored to have you here. Please stay for the reception. We'd love to talk more. There are so many people here who would benefit from meeting you. Evan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw exactly what he'd always known would happen. The recalculation, the shift from dismissal to desperate interest, the transformation of worthless to invaluable, based solely on information about his bank account. No. Catherine blinked. I'm sorry? I said no. Evan's voice stayed calm, but steel lived underneath. I'm not staying, and I'm not interested in being introduced to anyone. He turned to Sophia. She was still staring at him, her face a mixture of shock and hurt, and something that looked like betrayal. We need to talk. Sophia didn't move. You're Jay Vale. Yes. The Jay Vale. The one everyone's been trying to find for years. Yes. Her voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Evan looked around the ballroom. Everyone was watching, listening, recording. He could feel the weight of their attention pressing down like a physical force. Not here. But Sophia wasn't done. How long were you planning to keep this from me? I wasn't keeping it from you. I was keeping it from this. He gestured at the room, at the people already pulling out business cards, at Catherine still hovering with that desperate smile. This is why I left that world. This is why I don't tell people who I am. Sophia's eyes glistened. But I'm not them. The words hung between them, an accusation and a plea. I'm not. She stopped, swallowed hard. I thought we were honest with each other. Something cracked inside Evan's chest. We were. No. Sophia's voice shook. We weren't. I told you everything. About my family, about how suffocating my life is, about how I can't trust anyone because everyone wants something from me. And you just sat there and let me talk. You let me think you were different. I am different. Are you? Sophia looked at him.
really looked at him. Because right now, you feel like everyone else. Just another person with secrets. Evan opened his mouth to respond, but Diana was suddenly there, wedding dress rustling as she moved between them. She looked between Sophia and Evan, expression tight with the particular anger of someone whose moment had been stolen. Can we not do this right now? This is my wedding. Sophia turned on her sister. Your wedding? Your wedding? Where you and Mother spent the last 2 weeks making sure I knew Evan wasn't good enough? Where you sent me links to $1,000 suits because you were embarrassed by him? Diana's face flushed. I was trying to help. You were trying to control me, like you always do, like Mother always does. Sophia's voice broke. And I let you because I thought... She stopped, looked at Evan. I thought at least one person in my life wasn't lying to me. The words landed like blows. Evan felt them hit, felt the accusations settle into truth. I never lied. You didn't tell the truth either. The ballroom was still watching, still listening. Evan could see phones recording, could see people leaning in to catch every word. He'd spent 12 years avoiding exactly this moment, the exposure, the spectacle, the transformation from person to commodity. And now it was happening anyway. He took a breath. You're right. I should have told you, but I didn't know how to do it without this happening. He gestured at the crowd. Without becoming a transaction. Sophia's expression shifted. For a second, he thought he saw understanding, but then she shook her head. You didn't trust me. That's not, you didn't trust me, she repeated, voice breaking. You thought I'd treat you differently if I knew. You thought I'd want something from you. Evan didn't answer, because she was right. That was exactly what he'd thought. What he'd been trained by experience to think. Sophia stepped back. I need some air. She walked away. Evan watched her go, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on his back. Diana glared at him before hurrying after her sister. Catherine stood frozen, clearly torn between comforting her daughter and pursuing the billionaire investor who'd just been exposed at her younger daughter's wedding. Marcus approached slowly, guilt written across his features. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to... Evan held up a hand. It's not your fault. I just wanted them to know. I wanted them to see who you really are. Evan looked at him. They don't see who I am. They see what I can do for them. There's a difference. He turned and walked out of the ballroom. No one tried to stop him, but he could feel them watching, could feel the shift in the room. He wasn't Evan anymore. He was Jay Vale. And that name came with expectations he'd spent 12 years trying to escape. Outside, the night air was cold. Evan found a bench near one of the decorative fountains and sat down. He could hear the murmur of the reception starting up again inside, people pretending nothing had happened while absolutely talking about nothing else. He pulled out his phone. No messages. He didn't expect any. Sophia was probably somewhere inside, trying to process what she'd just learned. And he didn't blame her for being angry. He'd known this would happen eventually, just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Footsteps approached. Evan looked up, expecting Sophia, hoping for Sophia. It was Catherine Sterling. She sat beside him without asking, smoothing her dress carefully. That was quite a scene. Evan didn't respond. She tried a different approach. I want to apologize for the way we treated you. If we'd known, you'd have treated me differently, Evan finished. I know. She smiled, but it was tight. You can't blame us for that. You have to understand we had no idea who you were.
And that's the problem. Evan looked at her. I'm the same person I was an hour ago. The only thing that changed is what you think I'm worth. Her smile faltered. That's not fair. Isn't it? Evan stood. Your daughter sent me links to designer suits because she thought I'd embarrass her. You looked at me like I was a stain on your family's reputation. And now you're sitting here apologizing because you found out I have money. Tell me how that's fair.
Catherine opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. Evan walked back toward the building. He needed to find Sophia, needed to explain, needed to fix this before it broke completely. But when he reached the ballroom, he saw her standing near the bar with Diana. They were talking in low, urgent voices. Sophia's face was red, tear-streaked. Diana was gesturing wildly. Evan approached slowly. Diana saw him first. Her expression hardened. I think you've done enough damage for one night. I need to talk to Sophia. She doesn't want to talk to you. Let her tell me that. Sophia turned. Her eyes were still wet, but her voice came out steady. She's right. I don't want to talk to you. Not right now. The words hit harder than Evan expected. Sophia, you made me feel like an idiot. Her voice stayed quiet, but every word carried weight. I stood up for you. I told my family you were different, that you didn't care about money or status.
And the whole time, you were exactly what they are, just better at hiding it. That's not true, isn't it? Sophia's voice rose slightly. You have more money than my entire family combined. You're one of the most powerful investors in the country, and you let me sit there and complain about my life like you couldn't relate, like you didn't understand what it's like to be judged for your net worth. Evan shook his head. I do understand. That's why I didn't tell you. Because the second people know, that's all they see. I didn't want you to see me that way. So you lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Sophia laughed, but it was bitter. That's the same thing, Evan, and you know it. Diana put a hand on Sophia's shoulder. Come on, let's go fix your makeup. You shouldn't have to deal with this tonight. But Sophia didn't move. She just looked at Evan. I thought you were safe. I thought you were the one person in my life who wanted me for me, not for my name, not for my money. Just me. I do want you. No. Sophia's voice was quiet, but final. You're here because I asked, and you said yes because you felt sorry for me, because you thought you were doing me a favor. That's not, I need you to leave. The words came out soft but absolute. I need you to leave and let me figure out what's real and what's not. Evan stared at her. He wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to make her understand that everything between them had been real, even if it was built on incomplete truth. But he could see the wall she'd built, could see the hurt in her eyes, and he knew that anything he said right now would only make it worse. So he nodded. Okay. He turned and walked out, past the guests who were still whispering, past Marcus, who looked like he wanted to apologize again, past Catherine, who was now surrounded by people asking about Jay Vale. Evan didn't stop. He walked straight to the ballet, got his keys, and drove away. The city lights blurred as he drove. He didn't go home, couldn't face the empty apartment, couldn't face the reminder of the life he'd built that suddenly felt hollow. Instead, he drove to Rosewood Cafe. The cafe was closed, dark windows reflecting streetlights, but he parked outside anyway and sat in the silence. This was where it had started, where he'd been just Evan, where Sophia had been just Sophia, where they'd built something that felt real precisely because it existed outside of context. He pulled out his phone and stared at her contact. He wanted to text her, wanted to tell her that he hadn't meant to hurt her, that he'd been trying to protect what they had. But he knew she wouldn't read it, not tonight. So he sat there, alone, in the place where they'd found each other. And he wondered if what they'd found was already gone. Inside the ballroom, the reception lurched forward with the awkward momentum of a train that had derailed but somehow kept moving. Marcus and Diana cut their cake while cameras flashed. Guests filled plates at the buffet, clinked glasses, made toasts that carefully avoided mentioning the scene everyone was still processing. But every conversation circled back to the same question. Who was Jay Vale, really? Sophia stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, arms wrapped around herself against the October chill. She had escaped the ballroom 20 minutes ago, unable to stomach another pitying look or whispered speculation about the man she'd brought, the man she'd thought she knew. Her phone buzzed. Catherine's name appeared on the screen for the 4th time in 10 minutes. Sophia let it go to voicemail. The door opened behind her. Diana appeared, still in her wedding gown, expression caught between concern and irritation. You can't hide out here all night. Sophia didn't turn around. Watch me. Diana moved to stand beside her, looking out at the manicured gardens that had cost more than most people made in a year. Mother's going insane in there. Half the room wants to know how you met him, the other half wants introductions. Tell them he's unavailable. Sophia, he left, Diana. I asked him to leave, and he did. Sophia's voice came out flat, empty of the emotion churning underneath. So there's nothing to introduce anyone to. Diana was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, do you want to talk about what happened? You mean, do I want to discuss how the man I've been seeing for the past month turned out to be one of the wealthiest, most influential investors in the country? Sophia's laugh held no humor. How I poured my heart out to him about my trust issues, about people who only want me for my family's money, and he just sat there, nodding along like he couldn't possibly relate. He was probably trying to protect himself. Sophia finally turned to look at her sister. From what? From me? Diana's expression softened in a way Sophia rarely saw. From what happened in there. Everyone treating him differently the second they knew. Isn't that exactly what you were running from too? The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Sophia had spent 10 years keeping people at arm's length, terrified they'd only want access to Sterling Enterprises. She'd hidden in Portland, cultivated a separate life where she could just be Sophia instead of Sophia Sterling, heiress and CEO. And she'd met Evan doing the exact same thing. The symmetry should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like betrayal. It's different. How? Because I would have understood. Sophia's voice rose, frustration breaking through. If he'd told me the truth from the beginning, I would have gotten it. I would have seen we were the same. But he didn't trust me enough for that. Diana considered this. Or maybe he trusted you so much he was terrified of losing you.
Before Sophia could respond, Catherine appeared in the doorway. She'd shed the desperate eagerness from earlier, replaced it with the cool composure she wore like armor. Sophia, darling, we need to talk. Not now, Mother. Yes, now. Catherine stepped onto the terrace, closing the door behind her. That man, Evan Hart or Jay Vale or whatever he calls himself, just walked away from the most important networking opportunity our family has had in a decade. Sophia stared at her mother. Is that really what you think this is about? What I think is that you brought someone significant into our circle without proper vetting, and now we're all scrambling to understand the implications. Proper vetting. Sophia repeated the words like they tasted bitter. You mean you wish you'd known he was rich before you sent me links to expensive suits because you were embarrassed by him? Catherine's jaw tightened.
I was trying to help you present well. No, you were trying to control how I looked to your friends. And the second you found out Evan had more money than most of them combined, you couldn't apologize fast enough. I made a mistake in judgment. I'm attempting to correct it. Sophia moved toward the door, unable to stay in her mother's orbit another second. The only thing you're attempting to correct is your access to his investment portfolio. I'm going home. Sophia. But she was already walking back through the ballroom, ignoring the eyes that tracked her movement. She found her driver, gave him Evan's address from memory. She'd never been there, but had seen it on his phone once when he'd called a car. 15 minutes later, she stood outside a modest apartment building in a quiet Portland neighborhood. The kind of place where people worked regular jobs and worried about regular things. Nothing about it suggested wealth or power or influence, which was exactly the point, she realized. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and knocked on apartment 3C. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Sophia pulled out her phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. She tried twice more with the same result before accepting he wasn't here, wasn't anywhere she could find him. She sat down on the floor outside his door, back against the wall, and let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. Evan drove for 2 hours before his phone battery died, which felt appropriate. He'd left his charger at home, left everything behind except the clothes he wore and the growing certainty that he'd destroyed something worth keeping. By the time he pulled into a rest stop outside Salem, exhaustion had settled into his bones. He couldn't go back to Portland yet, couldn't face the apartment that suddenly felt more like a hiding place than a home. His laptop was in the trunk, always there, always connected through encrypted channels to the network of investments that comprised Jay Vale's empire. He'd maintained the fiction that he could separate Evan Hart from his professional identity, but the truth was simpler. He'd just gotten better at hiding. He opened the laptop in the harsh fluorescent light of the rest stop. 47 new emails, all sent in the last 3 hours. Investors who'd somehow obtained his personal address. Entrepreneurs who'd been sitting on his contact for years, waiting for the right moment. Journalists asking for statements, interviews, clarification on how many companies he'd funded and how much money he'd made. The anonymity he'd cultivated for 12 years had evaporated in the span of Marcus Richardson's confession. One email stood out, from Rebecca, his ex-wife. The subject line, "I saw the video." Of course there was a video. Of course it had already spread beyond the wedding, beyond the immediate circle of guests. That's what happened when something dramatic unfolded at a society event. It became content, entertainment, currency. He opened the email against his better judgment. Evan, whatever you're thinking right now, don't do it. Don't run again. I know that's your instinct. It's always been your instinct. But running is what cost us our marriage. You can't keep hiding from who you are. Lily deserves a father who isn't afraid of being seen. And maybe this woman, whoever she is, deserves the same honesty. Evan closed the laptop. Rebecca didn't get to have opinions about his choices anymore. She'd forfeited that right when she'd chosen the lifestyle over their family. But the word stuck anyway. His phone remained dead. No way to call Lily, to explain what had happened before she saw it online. No way to reach Sophia, not that she'd answer anyway. He was completely alone, which was what he'd claimed to want for 12 years. Turned out wanting something and living with it were different things. Evan dozed in the car until dawn, then drove back to Portland as the city woke up. Sunday morning meant fewer people on the streets, fewer eyes that might recognize him from viral videos they'd scrolled past. He made it to his apartment building without incident, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Sophia was sitting outside his door, asleep against the wall. Her makeup had smudged, her carefully styled hair fallen loose. She looked exhausted and young, and nothing like the polished woman who'd picked him up for the wedding. She looked like the person he'd met at Rosewood Cafe. Evan knelt beside her, close enough that his movement disturbed her sleep. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused for a moment before recognition hit. She sat up straighter. "Your phone's been off." "Battery died." "I've been here since midnight." Evan checked his watch. 6:30.
You've been sitting in a hallway for 6 hours?
"I needed to know if you were okay." Sophia's voice carried something raw, stripped of the anger from the wedding. "And I needed to know if I was." He unlocked his door and gestured for her to come inside. The apartment was exactly what it appeared to be. Modest furniture, shelves of actual books instead of designer objects, a kitchen that showed signs of real use. No expensive art, no status symbols, just a space where someone lived quietly. Sophia walked through it slowly, taking in details. She stopped at the small bookshelf near the window, running her finger along the spines. Half of them matched books they'd discussed at the cafe. "This is really your life?" "This is really my life," Evan confirmed. He moved to the kitchen, started coffee out of habit. "The other thing, J. Vale, the investments, all of it, that's work. This is where I live." Sophia turned to face him. "Tell me the whole story."
Not the version you think I can handle. The actual truth. So Evan did. He told her about meeting Rebecca at Stanford, both of them young and ambitious and convinced they'd conquer the world together. About building Hartley Ventures from nothing, making smart bets that paid off exponentially, becoming the kind of success story that business schools taught as case studies. He told her about the slow realization that Rebecca loved the lifestyle more than the life, about watching her transform from a partner into a socialite, from someone who cared about impact into someone who measured worth in invitations and appearances and the right circles. He told her about Lily being born when he was 38, about the overwhelming desire to give his daughter something different than the world he'd built, about trying to pull back from the relentless pace, wanting to be present for bedtime stories and school plays instead of always chasing the next deal. And he told her about the breaking point, discovering Rebecca had committed $50 million of their fund to a startup he'd explicitly rejected, simply because the founder was married to her friend. The company had collapsed 6 months later, taking their money and their reputation with it. I confronted her. She told me I was being selfish, that I owed it to Lily to give her the world. But I looked at our 2-year-old daughter, and all I saw was a future where she'd be valued for her last name instead of who she was. Evan poured coffee into 2 mugs, hands steady despite the weight of memory. So I filed for divorce, walked away from Hartley Ventures, changed my name legally to Hart, my mother's maiden name, started investing under the pseudonym J. Vale so I could keep doing what I was good at without being a public figure. Sophia accepted the coffee, wrapping her hands around the warmth. And Rebecca? Got the San Francisco house, the social circle, everything she wanted. I got primary custody of Lily and anonymity. Lily stays with her every other week because I won't take my daughter away from her mother, even if we have different values about what matters. Evan leaned against the counter. Rebecca remarried within 2 years. Venture capitalist, even wealthier than I was. Lily goes to private school, has everything money can buy. And I live here, trying to give her at least one parent who values her for more than her potential to enhance our status. The story settled between them, heavy with implications. Sophia set her coffee down carefully. Why didn't you tell me about Lily from the beginning? Because the moment I mention having a daughter, people ask questions. Where does she go to school? Where does her mother live? Why did the marriage end? Every question leads back to who I was, what I walked away from, why I left. He met her eyes. I wanted to keep you separate from all that.
I wanted there to be one part of my life that existed outside the narrative. But I'm not a part of your life. I'm a person who deserves to know who she's spending time with. You're right. The admission came easier than Evan expected. You're absolutely right. I was so focused on protecting myself that I didn't think about what I was taking from you. Sophia moved to the window, looking out at the Portland morning. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Evan nodded. 10 years ago, I was engaged. His name was David Chen, brilliant architect, built sustainable housing for low-income communities through a nonprofit he'd started right out of college. I loved that he didn't care about money or status or any of the things that defined my family. She turned to face Evan, pain evident in her expression. We dated for 2 years before I told him about Sterling Enterprises. Before that, I just said I worked in real estate. True enough, vague enough. When he found out the truth, that I was worth hundreds of millions personally, that my family basically owned half of Portland's commercial real estate, everything changed. Evan stayed quiet, letting her work through it. He started asking my opinion on business decisions, wanted introductions to investors, eventually proposed a partnership where Sterling Enterprises would fund his housing projects. When I said no, that I wanted to keep work and personal separate, he accused me of not believing in his vision. Sophia's voice went flat. I broke off the engagement, and I've spent 10 years alone because I couldn't tell if anyone wanted me or wanted access to my family's resources. The parallel hit Evan like a physical blow. They'd been running from the same thing, just approaching it from opposite directions. So when I met you at Rosewood, and you didn't ask what I did, didn't try to impress me, just existed quietly in the same space, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me. She met his eyes. But I didn't see you. I saw the version you were performing, and that's not actually better than what David did, is it? You were still hiding who you were because you assumed I couldn't handle the truth. I assumed you'd change once you knew. Everyone does. Everyone includes me now, apparently. Sophia's smile was sad. You were right about my family. The second they found out, the second Marcus said your name, they transformed. Mother went from barely acknowledging you to desperately trying to keep you there. Diana's probably already planning how to leverage your presence at her wedding into social capital. You predicted all of it. I didn't want to be right. But you were. Sophia picked up her purse. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're so used to people wanting us for the wrong reasons that we can't recognize when someone might want us for the right ones. She moved toward the door. Evan's chest tightened. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Home, probably. I need to think. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. You should call your daughter. Tell her what happened before she sees it online. After Sophia left, Evan stood in his apartment and felt the silence press down. He'd built this life to be quiet, controlled, safe, and it had worked for 12 years, right up until it hadn't. He plugged in his phone and waited for it to charge enough to power on. The screen lit up with notification after notification, missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, texts from colleagues he hadn't spoken to in years, news alerts about himself. And one text from Lily, sent at 7 that morning. Dad, call me when you wake up. I saw the videos. We need to talk. Evan called immediately. Lily picked up on the first ring. Dad! Holy shit!
Language? Dad, you're trending on Twitter. There are like 15 different videos of Marcus kneeling in front of you. People are pulling up old Forbes articles, trying to figure out how much you're worth. Her voice carried concern rather than excitement. Are you okay? Evan sank onto his couch. I'm not sure yet. What about the woman, Sophia Sterling? I looked her up. CEO of Sterling Enterprises, pretty major real estate developer. That's who you've been seeing? Was seeing, probably. Lily was quiet for a moment. You didn't tell her, did you? No. Dad. The disappointment in his daughter's voice cut deeper than Sophia's anger had. I told you she needed to know. I know you did. I should have listened. Evan rubbed his face. How bad is it online? It's not bad, exactly. Most people are impressed. They're calling you a genius, praising you for staying anonymous, speculating about other companies you might have funded. Lily paused. But there are also people trying to figure out where you live, where I go to school. Mom's freaking out a little. Evan's protective instincts fired immediately. Are you safe? I'm fine, Dad. Mom hired extra security for the house, which is totally over the top but makes her feel better. I'm more worried about you. I'll be okay. Will you, though? Lily's voice softened. You spent 12 years building walls to keep people out, and now those walls just got demolished in front of 200 people with smartphones. That's not nothing. She was right. Of course she was right. Lily was usually right about things that mattered. I'll figure it out. What about Sophia? Evan looked at the door she'd walked through an hour ago. I don't know. I think I broke something I can't fix. Do you want to fix it? The question hung there, deceptively simple. Did he want to fix it? Did he want to let someone in, risk the exposure and judgment and potential betrayal that came with being fully known? Before he could answer, his doorbell rang. Lily, I need to go. Someone's here. Okay. But Dad, whatever you decide about Sophia, don't decide based on fear. Decide based on what you actually want. They hung up. Evan went to the door expecting Sophia had come back, maybe thought of something else to say. Instead, he found Catherine Sterling standing in his hallway, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. Mr. Hott, may I come in? Evan stepped aside, too surprised to refuse. Catherine entered with the bearing of someone accustomed to being welcome everywhere. She surveyed his apartment with the same assessing gaze she'd used at the wedding, but this time her expression revealed nothing. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the networking preamble I attempted last night. She remained standing, hands folded in front of her. I judged you based on appearances, on assumptions about who you were and what you could offer my daughter. I treated you as if you didn't belong in our world, and I made you feel unwelcome in our home. The words sounded rehearsed, but not insincere. Evan waited for the other shoe to drop. That was wrong. You were a guest at Sophia's invitation, and you deserved respect regardless of your background or bank account. Catherine's voice wavered slightly. I've just said the same thing to the remaining guests downstairs at the manor. I wanted to say it to you directly. Why? Because Sophia threatened to resign from Sterling Enterprises and remove herself from the family trust if I didn't. Catherine's composure cracked just slightly. My daughter is willing to walk away from everything she's built, everything our family represents, rather than be associated with how we treated you. That tells me I misjudged more than just your financial status. Evan processed this. Sophia had gone to war with her family over him, drawn a line, and dared them to cross it.
You didn't need to do this for me, Mrs. Sterling. You needed to do it for your daughter.
I'm aware. Catherine moved toward the door, then paused.
Sophia's father, my husband, died 5 years ago. Heart attack while volunteering at a Habitat for Humanity build. He spent 40 years building Sterling Enterprises from a one-man carpentry business into what it is today. She turned to look at Evan. He is to say the measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. I failed that test spectacularly yesterday. I wanted you to know that I recognized it. After Catherine left, Evan sat in this apartment and tried to make sense of the past 18 hours. His carefully constructed life had collapsed. His anonymity was gone. The woman he'd started falling for knew he'd been lying by omission for weeks. And somehow, in the wreckage of all that, things were still moving forward. His phone rang. An unknown number, but something made him answer. Marcus Richardson's voice came through, hesitant. Mr. Vale, Evan, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from.
You're not wrong. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for exposing you, for ruining your date, for putting you in that position. Marcus paused. But I'm not sorry people know what you did for me. For us. You changed my life, and you deserved to be recognized for it. Evan's frustration flared. I didn't want recognition. That was the entire point. I gave you that money so you could build something meaningful, not so I could be worshipped at your wedding. I know that now. But in the moment, seeing you sitting there being dismissed by people who couldn't hold a candle to your accomplishments, I couldn't stay quiet. So you made a choice that affected my life without considering what I wanted? Sound familiar? The parallel to Rebecca wasn't subtle. Marcus caught it immediately. I'm sorry. I really am. If I could take it back, but you can't. None of us can. Evan's anger deflated into exhaustion. What's done is done. After hanging up, Evan opened his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He Googled himself. The results were overwhelming. His name, both names, appeared in hundreds of articles from the past 12 hours. Financial blogs dissecting his investment strategy. Tech sites listing companies rumored to be part of his portfolio. Society pages analyzing his relationship with Sophia Sterling. And videos. So many videos of Marcus kneeling, of Evan's face as everything collapsed, of Sophia's expression transforming from confusion to betrayal. His life had become content, entertainment, a story people consumed without thinking about the actual human at the center of it. This was why he'd run 12 years ago. This exact feeling of being observed, analyzed, reduced to a commodity. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Sophia. I blocked your regular contact because I needed space. But I wanted you to know I'm not avoiding you out of anger anymore. I'm avoiding you because I need to figure out what I actually feel. Give me a few days. Evan stared at the message. A few days. He could give her that. He owed her that. But the waiting was going to kill him. Monday morning arrived with the weight of responsibility Evan had been avoiding. He couldn't hide in his apartment forever, couldn't pretend the past 48 hours hadn't happened. He needed to manage the fallout. First call, his lawyer, the only person besides his accountant who knew Jay Vale's real identity. The conversation was brief and professional. Yes, they could prepare a statement. No, Evan didn't need to give interviews. Yes, they should expect increased scrutiny on all his investments going forward. Second call, his accountant, who informed him that 3 different investment firms had already reached out seeking partnerships. Evan declined all of them without hearing the pitches. Third call, his daughter. "How are you holding up, Dad?" "I'm managing. How's school?" Lily saw through the deflection immediately. "School's fine. I'm more interested in whether you've talked to Sophia." "She asked for space. I'm giving it to her." "That's probably smart." Lily's tone suggested she thought it was anything but smart. "Are you going to stay in Portland?" The question caught Evan off guard. "Why would I leave?" "Because your whole reason for being there was anonymity, and now that's gone. People know where you live, or they will soon. You can't hide anymore." Evan looked around his apartment at the life he'd built through careful intention and constant vigilance. "I'm not ready to give this up." "Then don't. But maybe stop thinking of it as hiding and start thinking of it as just living." After they hung up, Evan sat with his daughter's words. Stop hiding, start living. Easier said than done when every instinct screamed at him to run again, to find a new city and a new name and start over. But running hadn't solved anything 12 years ago. It had just postponed the inevitable. Tuesday morning, Evan went to Rosewood Cafe. He half expected the place to be overrun with people who'd recognized him from the videos. Instead, he found the same quiet space, the same college student typing near the window, the same crossword enthusiast by the register. The barista looked up when he entered. "Gray suit guy. Haven't seen you in a few days. The usual?" Evan nodded, relieved beyond measure that he was still just gray suit guy here. He sat in his corner booth and opened a book, trying to recapture the routine that had anchored him for the past year. But the booth felt empty without Sophia across from him. The quiet that used to comfort now just felt lonely. His phone buzzed. Text from Sophia's temporary number. "Are you at Rosewood?" "Yes." "Stay there. I'm coming over." Evan's heart rate accelerated. 3 days since the wedding, 3 days of silence, and now she was coming. To say what? To end things properly? To try again? He forced himself to keep reading, to not watch the door like a desperate teenager. But when the bell chimed and Sophia walked in, every pretense of calm evaporated. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. She looked exactly like the woman he'd met a month ago, before everything got complicated. Sophia slid into the seat across from him without asking permission. The barista brought over black coffee without being asked, setting it down with a knowing look. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down. Sophia spoke first. "I went through every conversation we had, every word, every moment, trying to figure out what was real and what was performance." Evan set his book aside, giving her his full attention. "And I realized something. The things you told me about wanting quiet, about being tired of the world being loud, about understanding what it's like to be controlled by people who think they know better. All of that was true. You weren't lying about who you are. You were just lying about what you have." "I wasn't lying. I was omitting." "Which is lying." Sophia's voice held no anger, just resignation. "But I'm not innocent either. I did the same thing. I let you think I was just someone who worked in real estate. I never mentioned Sterling Enterprises or my family's money or the fact that I spent half my time in board meetings dealing with the exact kind of people you were avoiding." "Why didn't you?" "For the same reason you didn't tell me about Jay Vale. I wanted one part of my life where I was just Sophia, where someone wanted to know me without calculating what I could do for them." She wrapped her hands around her coffee. We were both hiding. We were both performing a version of ourselves we thought was safer.
Evan nodded slowly. So what now? Sophia met his eyes. Now we decide if we want to try this with the truth. All of it. No omissions, no performance, no hiding behind the versions of ourselves that feel safer.
That's terrifying.
It really is. Sophia's lips curved into something almost like a smile. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the only way to know if this is real is to risk it being real. Evan reached across the table, palm up. Sophia looked at his hand for a long moment before placing hers in it. I have a daughter, Lily. She's 14, brilliant, more emotionally intelligent than I'll ever be. She stays with me every other week. She's my whole world, and meeting her is not optional if this continues. Sophia squeezed his hand. I'd like that. Eventually, when we're ready.
I'm going to need therapy. Probably couples therapy too if we're doing this, because I have 12 years of trust issues and defensive patterns that aren't going to disappear just because I want them to. I've been in therapy for 8 years. I'll send you my therapist's information. She's great with commitment issues and family trauma.
Evan laughed, surprised by the sound. Anything else I should know? Sophia pulled out her phone, opened her messages, and turned it to show him. Catherine had texted her 17 times since Sunday, each message progressively more desperate.
My mother wants to have lunch with us. Together. She used the words apologize properly and start fresh.
Do you want to?
No, but I think I need to. I think we both need to see if my family can actually respect boundaries, or if I'm going to have to make good on my threat to walk away from Sterling Enterprises.
Evan considered this. You'd really do that? Leave the company?
I don't know. Ask me again after lunch with Mother.
Sophia's expression turned serious. But here's what I do know. I'm not going to let my family treat us, like a transaction. If they can't respect that, then yes, I'll leave. I have enough money to never work again. Sterling Enterprises is legacy and obligation, not necessity. They sat there, hands linked across the table. Two people who'd spent years hiding, finally trying to be seen. The barista approached with a knowing smile. So, gray suit guy finally made his move? Sophia raised an eyebrow. Gray suit guy? That's what we call him. Your ponytail lady. You two have been dancing around each other for weeks. The barista refilled their coffee without being asked. About time you figured it out? After she left, Sophia started laughing. Real laughter that transformed her face. We have nicknames. Apparently, we're not as subtle as we thought. Or maybe we were exactly as obvious as everyone but us could see. Sophia sobered slightly. Evan, I need you to promise me something. What? No more secrets. Not about money, not about the past, not about anything important. If we're doing this, really doing this, then we have to trust each other with the truth. Evan thought about all the ways truth could be weaponized, all the times honesty had cost him, but he also thought about his daughter's advice. Don't decide based on fear. Decide based on what you actually want. And what he wanted was sitting across from him, asking for something he'd been terrified to give anyone for 12 years. I promise. No more secrets. Sophia nodded. Then quietly, my mother's not the only one who wants to meet. Diana sent me a very long apology text about how she handled the wardrobe situation. She wants to apologize to you too. Do you believe she means it? I think she's horrified that she almost lost her relationship with me over a suit. Sophia's expression was complicated. Diana and I have always had a difficult relationship.
She's the younger sister who followed all the rules, married the right kind of person, made mother proud. I'm the one who couldn't be bothered to conform. But underneath all that, we care about each other. So we're having lunch with your mother and coffee with your sister? Welcome to dating someone from a complicated family. Sophia's smile held genuine warmth. For what it's worth, you're going to meet my father, too. Or at least his memory. Mother brought him up during her apology, which she never does. He died 5 years ago, and she's barely mentioned him since. Evan remembered Catherine's story about her husband, about Habitat for Humanity, and measuring people by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. He sounds like someone worth knowing. He would have liked you. The real you. Both versions. Sophia finished her coffee. I should probably go. I have meetings all afternoon, and I need to prepare for the inevitable questions about my personal life. How are you planning to handle those? With the truth. I'm seeing someone. It's new. It's complicated. And it's nobody's business but ours. She stood, gathering her bag. Unless you'd prefer I keep it quiet. Evan stood too. No. I'm done hiding. Or at least, I'm trying to be. Sophia kissed him, brief but real, right there in the middle of Rosewood Cafe, where the barista could definitely see and would probably have opinions. When she pulled back, she was smiling. That's going to be all over the cafe gossip network by this afternoon. Probably already posted on their Instagram. Good. Sophia headed for the door, then turned back. Thursday. Same time, same place? I'll be here. After she left, Evan sat back down and tried to process everything that had just happened. They were trying. Actually trying, with full knowledge of who each other was and what they carried. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Mom says someone photographed you at a cafe with Sophia Sterling, and it's already online. Are you getting back together? Evan looked at the barista, who was definitely typing something on her phone and grinning. He texted back, apparently yes, and apparently we're terrible at keeping things private. Lily's response came immediately. Good. I'm proud of you, Dad. This is scary, and you're doing it anyway. Evan smiled at his phone, at his daughter's faith in him, at the possibility that maybe running wasn't the only option anymore. Thursday arrived with the anxiety of a first date, even though they'd been meeting here for weeks. Evan got to Rosewood early, ordered his usual coffee, tried to look calm. Sophia arrived exactly on time, which he'd learned was one of her tells, punctuality as control. They fell into their old pattern, the one that had worked before everything got complicated. Sitting across from each other, coffee between them, comfortable silence that didn't demand constant conversation. Except this time, they weren't performing. This time, every silence felt intentional rather than defensive. Sophia pulled out her phone after about 20 minutes. Mother wants to know if Saturday works for lunch. She's proposing her club, but I told her absolutely not. Too many people, too much performance. So she suggested her house instead. Just the three of us? Diana will be there too. She insisted. I think she's genuinely sorry about the suit thing, but also she's nosy and wants to see how this plays out. Evan considered the invitation. Walking into Catherine Sterling's house, sitting down to a meal with a family that had judged him so thoroughly, felt like volunteering for more pain. But Sophia was watching him with an expression that said this mattered, that his willingness to try mattered. Saturday works. Sophia's relief was visible. Thank you. I know this isn't easy. Neither is what you're doing. Standing up to your family, drawing boundaries, threatening to walk away from everything you've built? It's not as hard as you'd think. Turns out I've been looking for an excuse to choose something other than obligation for years. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. You're a good excuse. The rest of the week passed in a strange suspension between old life and new. Evan maintained his routines, dropping Lily at school when she was with him, working from home on his investments, avoiding anything that felt like publicity. But underneath the routine, everything had shifted. He and Sophia texted throughout each day, nothing profound, just the small observations that people in the early stages of something share. She sent him a photo of a terrible corporate coffee with the caption, "Missing Rosewood." He sent back a picture of his book with the note, "Can't focus. Keep thinking about Saturday." Lily noticed the change immediately when she came for her midweek overnight. You're distracted in a different way than usual. Evan looked up from his laptop. Different how? Usually when you're distracted, it's because you're worried, trying to solve a problem or prevent a catastrophe. Lily sat cross-legged on the couch, studying him. This time you're distracted because you're happy. It's weird, but also kind of nice. I'm meeting her family on Saturday. Formal lunch at her mother's house. Lily's expression shifted to concern. The same family that sent her suit links because they were embarrassed by you? The mother apologized, publicly at the wedding, and then privately at my apartment. And you believe her? Evan thought about Catherine's reference to her husband, about the crack in her composure when she admitted Sophia had threatened to walk away. I think she's trying. Whether it's because she actually regrets her behavior or because she wants to maintain access to her daughter, I don't know yet. What about Sophia? Does she believe it? She's willing to give her family a chance to do better. That's all any of us can ask for, right? Lily nodded slowly. When do I get to meet her? The question landed with unexpected weight. Evan had been so focused on navigating the present crisis that he hadn't thought ahead to the next step, the one where his two worlds actually collided. Soon. If this keeps going the way it's going, soon. Good. Because if you're serious about her, I need to make sure she's good enough for you. Evan smiled at his daughter's protectiveness. Shouldn't that be my line? Probably, but you're terrible at vetting people. You either trust them completely or not at all. There's no middle ground with you. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Evan had spent 12 years trusting almost no one, building walls so high that even people who deserved access couldn't climb them. Sophia was the first person in over a decade he'd even considered letting in, and that terrified him almost as much as it excited him. Saturday arrived with the particular dread of an obligation that couldn't be avoided. Evan stood in front of his closet, staring at the same gray suit that had caused so much trouble a week ago. He pulled it out, then put it back. Pulled it out again. Sophia had texted that morning, "Wear whatever feels right. You don't have anything to prove." But that wasn't quite true. He had everything to prove. That he could exist in her world without armor. That he could face her family's judgment a second time. That he was worth the risk she was taking. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, something between casual and formal. A compromise that felt more honest than either extreme. Sophia picked him up at noon. She wore a simple dress, her hair down, less polished than she'd been at the wedding, but more put together than their cafe mornings. Ready? Evan climbed into her car. She was driving herself this time, no chauffeur as buffer. As I'll ever be. The Sterling house wasn't the manor where the wedding had been held. This was Catherine's personal residence, a craftsman-style home in Portland's West Hills with views of the city below. Old money trying to look understated, though the address alone probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime.
Catherine answered the door herself, another departure from the wedding's formal staff. She wore slacks and a cashmere sweater, her silver hair in a simple style. "Evan, thank you for coming." She stepped back to let them in. "Sophia, darling." The house smelled like something baking, bread maybe, or pastries. Homey in a way that felt intentional, staged for his benefit. Diana appeared from what looked like a kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd clearly been helping with food preparation, which seemed out of character for the woman who'd sent designer suit links. "Evan, I owe you an apology." Diana's directness caught him off guard. "The wardrobe suggestions were inappropriate and condescending. I was trying to control a situation I had no business controlling, and I made you feel unwelcome. I'm sorry." Evan studied her, looking for insincerity and finding only discomfort. "Thank you." "I also owe Sophia an apology for making her wedding date about my anxiety instead of her happiness." Diana looked at her sister. "I was worried what people would think, and I took that out on you. That wasn't fair." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "Apology accepted. For both of us." Catherine gestured toward the dining room. "Shall we eat? I thought we could talk while we have lunch." The table was set simply, no formal china, no elaborate centerpieces, just 4 place settings and serving dishes of food that looked homemade. Catherine had clearly put thought into making this feel less intimidating, though the effort itself carried its own weight. They sat. Catherine served soup, butternut squash, rich and warming. For a few minutes they ate in silence, the awkwardness of the situation settling over them like fog. Finally, Catherine set down her spoon. "I need to explain myself. Not as an excuse, but as context." Evan waited, Sophia tense beside him. "My husband built Sterling Enterprises from nothing. Started as a carpenter's apprentice at 16, worked his way up, eventually started his own construction company. By the time he was 40, he'd developed half of Portland's Southeast District." Catherine's voice carried something Evan hadn't heard before, genuine emotion instead of social performance. Thomas was brilliant at reading people, at seeing potential where others saw risk. He hired people based on character, not credentials. Some of our most successful developments came from ideas pitched by workers without college degrees. She looked at Evan directly. He would have seen you immediately for who you are, would have recognized the quality underneath the presentation. I failed to do that because I've spent the last 5 years trying to protect what he built, and somewhere in that process, I forgot his most important lesson. Diana picked up the thread. The measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. Dad said it constantly, lived it constantly, and we, she gestured between herself and Catherine, forgot it completely. Sophia's hand found Evan's under the table, fingers intertwining. Catherine continued, "When Marcus revealed who you were, my first instinct wasn't shame at how I treated you. It was excitement at the opportunity you represented. It took Sophia threatening to walk away from everything for me to understand how badly I'd failed. Not just failed me." Sophia's voice carried steel underneath the calm. "Failed yourselves. Failed Dad's legacy." "You're right." Catherine's composure cracked further. "You're absolutely right. And I'm trying to do better. To be better." Evan set down his spoon. "Mrs. Sterling, I appreciate the apology, I do. But I need to know, are you apologizing because you regret how you treated me, or because you're afraid of losing Sophia?" The question hung in the air, sharp and uncomfortable. Catherine took a long breath. "Both, if I'm being honest. I regret my behavior because it was wrong. But I'm also terrified of losing my daughter. And that fear is what finally made me examine why I was wrong. The honesty surprised him. At least you're not pretending the stakes don't matter. The stakes matter enormously. Sophia is... Catherine's voice wavered. The last real connection I have to Thomas. Diana has her own life now, her own family starting. But Sophia and I worked side by side at Sterling for years. Losing that, losing her, would destroy me. Sophia squeezed Evan's hand tighter. I don't want to lose you either, Mother. But I can't be part of a family that measures people by their bank accounts, that treats relationships like networking opportunities. I know. Catherine met her daughter's eyes, which is why I'm asking both of you to give me a chance to prove I can change. I can't undo the wedding, can't take back the judgment or the condescension, but I can commit to doing better going forward. Evan considered this. Every instinct told him to protect himself, to maintain distance from people who'd proven they could hurt him. But sitting across from Catherine, seeing real shame and real fear in her expression, he understood something. She was as trapped by her world as he'd been by his. What does doing better look like, specifically? Catherine seemed prepared for this. No more networking requests, no introductions to board members or investors unless you explicitly offer. No leveraging your presence or your reputation for Sterling's benefit. She paused. And no more judgment about Sophia's choices. If she wants to date someone, marry someone, build a life with someone, that's her decision, not mine. Diana added, Same from me. No wardrobe suggestions, no social coaching, no trying to manage optics. What you and Sophia do is your business. Sophia looked at Evan, silently asking if this was enough. Evan thought about Lily's advice. Don't decide based on fear. Decide based on what you want. And what he wanted was a chance to see if this could actually work. Not just with Sophia, but with the whole complicated reality of her life. Okay, we can try. The relief on Catherine's face was palpable. Thank you. They finished lunch with the conversation shifting to safer topics. Diana's honeymoon plans, updates on Sterling projects, Evan's careful non-answers about his investment portfolio. The tension eased gradually, though it never fully disappeared. After dessert, Diana excused herself to meet Marcus. Catherine cleared plates with an efficiency that suggested she didn't actually have staff here, or had sent them away for privacy. Sophia and Evan found themselves alone in Catherine's living room, surrounded by photos that told the story of a family before loss reshaped it. Thomas Sterling appeared in frame after frame, at construction sites, at charity events, at home with his daughters when they were small. He looks happy. Evan studied a photo of Thomas holding a tiny Sophia, both of them covered in what looked like paint. He was. Always. Even when things were hard, even when deals fell through or projects went over budget, he stayed optimistic. Sophia's voice carried the particular sadness of missing someone. Mother changed when he died. Became harder, more focused on legacy and appearances. I think she's terrified that if she stops controlling everything, she'll lose what's left of him. Is that why you stayed? At Sterling? Sophia considered the question. Partially, but also because I'm good at it, and I like the work. Building things, creating spaces people actually use and live in, that matters to me. Catherine returned, carrying coffee. She sat across from them, hands wrapped around her mug. Sophia told you I've never really talked about Thomas since he died? Evan nodded. That's because talking about him
makes his absence real in a way I haven't been ready to face. Catherine's voice went quiet. But seeing you two together, seeing how Sophia fights for this relationship, it reminded me of how Thomas fought for me. My family didn't approve of him initially. Carpenter's son, no college degree, all ambition and no pedigree. They thought I was making a terrible mistake. Sophia's eyes widened slightly. You never told me that. Because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I judged Evan the same way my family judged your father. Ashamed that I'd become exactly what I used to resent. Catherine met Evan's gaze. Thomas proved my family wrong by being exactly who he was. Honest, hardworking, brilliant in ways that had nothing to do with formal education. I suspect you're similar. Evan felt the comparison land, both flattering and uncomfortable. I had plenty of formal education. Stanford, MBA from Wharton. The credentials your family would have approved of. But you walked away from the world those credentials opened, because you wanted something more meaningful than status. Catherine smiled sadly. That's the part they would have approved of. The integrity. They talked for another hour, Catherine sharing stories about Thomas that Sophia had never heard, about his insistence on hiring from the local community, about his habit of showing up at job sites at dawn to work alongside the crews, about his belief that buildings should serve people instead of the other way around. Evan found himself genuinely liking the man he'd never meet, understanding why his loss had fractured this family so completely. When they finally left, Catherine walked them to the door. Evan, one more thing. She paused, choosing words carefully. I'd like you to come to our next family dinner. No agenda, no expectations, just dinner with people who are trying to do better. Evan looked at Sophia, who raised an eyebrow. Your call.
When? 2 weeks from today. Just the 4 of us, unless Sophia wants to bring Lily. The suggestion caught both Evan and Sophia off guard. Catherine inviting his daughter before even meeting her felt significant, though Evan couldn't quite parse whether it was genuine or strategic. Let me talk to Lily first. But maybe. After they left, Sophia drove them back to Evan's apartment instead of her condo. They sat in his living room, processing. That went better than I expected. Sophia kicked off her shoes, curling into his couch. Mother actually seemed genuine. She did. Evan sat beside her. But I'm not sure I trust it yet. People don't change that quickly. No, they don't. But maybe they can start changing. Begin the process, even if it takes years to complete. Sophia leaned against him. Is it weird that she invited Lily? Very weird. Also potentially good? I can't tell yet. Sophia laughed. Welcome to my family. Nothing is ever straightforward. Evan's phone buzzed. Text from Lily. How did lunch go? Are you still alive? He showed Sophia, who grinned. Your daughter has excellent instincts. Evan texted back. Alive, surprisingly okay. Catherine wants to meet you at family dinner in 2 weeks. Lily's response came quickly. What? That's moving fast. Also, I'm definitely coming because I need to evaluate this woman and her family. Sophia read over his shoulder. I like her already. The next week fell into a new pattern. Tuesday and Thursday mornings at Rosewood Cafe, but now they arrived together and left together. The barista's knowing smiles had evolved into outright commentary. You two are disgustingly cute. It's ruining the cafe's moody ambiance. But the routine grounded them, reminded them why they'd connected in the first place. In those morning hours, with coffee and books and comfortable silence, they could forget about the complications of their respective worlds. Friday evening, Evan picked up Lily from Rebecca's house in San Francisco. His ex-wife answered the door with an expression he couldn't quite read.
Evan, you look different.
Different how?
Lighter. Less like you're carrying the weight of the world.
Rebecca stepped aside to let him in.
Lily's almost ready. Can we talk for a minute?
They sat in Rebecca's immaculate living room, all white furniture and expensive art, the kind of space designed for photographs rather than actual living.
I saw the wedding videos. Everyone did.
Rebecca's tone wasn't accusatory, just observant.
You looked terrified when Marcus recognized you.
I was.
But you stayed. Didn't run, didn't disappear into a new city with a new name. You stayed and dealt with it.
Rebecca met his eyes.
That's growth, Evan. Real growth.
The acknowledgement from his ex-wife felt surreal. I had help. Sophia didn't let me run.
Good. You needed someone who wouldn't.
Rebecca paused. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I got so caught up in what we could be, what we could have, that I forgot to appreciate what we were. Evan studied her, this woman he'd loved and lost and resented in equal measure. Why are you telling me this now? Because Lily talks about you differently lately. She's excited for you, proud of you for taking risks. And I realized I never made her feel that way about our relationship, about us together. Rebecca's voice carried genuine regret. I was so busy building the life I thought we should have that I destroyed the life we actually had. We both made mistakes.
Maybe, but I made more of them.
She stood as Lily bounded down the stairs, overnight bag in hand.
Take care of her, Evan. And take care of yourself.
In the car, Lily immediately started interrogating him.
So I'm meeting Sophia's family in a week?
If you want to. No pressure.
Are you kidding? I've been dying to meet the woman who got you to stop hiding.
Lily scrolled through her phone. I may have researched her extensively. She seems cool. Runs a major company but also volunteers at Habitat for Humanity like once a month. That's her dad's thing, apparently. Evan glanced at his daughter. How extensively is extensively? I mean, I didn't hire a private investigator or anything. Just normal internet stalking. Lily grinned.
She's been single for like 10 years before you. Broke off an engagement to some architect who tried to use her family's money. Sound familiar?
Eerily familiar.
So you're both commitment-phobic workaholics with trust issues who finally found someone equally damaged. It's very romantic in a dysfunctional way.
Evan couldn't help laughing. When did you become so cynical?
I'm not cynical, I'm realistic. And realistically, you two are perfect for each other because you understand the same fears.
Lily's expression turned serious.
But Dad, you have to actually let her in. All the way.
No more walls. No more hiding parts of yourself because you think she can't handle it.
I'm trying.
I know. That's why I'm proud of you. The following Saturday arrived faster than Evan was prepared for. He and Sophia had decided to have Lily meet her first, just the three of them at dinner before the larger family gathering. Sophia was clearly nervous, checking her appearance 3 times before they left her condo to pick up Lily.
What if she hates me?
Evan pulled Sophia close. She's not going to hate you. She's been researching you for weeks.
That doesn't make me feel better.
They picked up Lily from Evan's apartment where she'd been staying for the weekend. His daughter was dressed carefully. Nice jeans, a sweater that was probably too warm for the restaurant, but made her look older than 14.
In the car, the two women sized each other up with the particular wariness of people who both loved the same person differently. Lily broke the silence first. "So you're the woman who convinced my dad to stop being a hermit?" Sophia laughed, surprised. "I don't think I convinced him of anything. He made that choice himself. But you gave him a reason to choose it. That counts for something." Lily's expression stayed neutral, evaluating. "He's been alone a long time. By choice, mostly. The last few people who tried to get close didn't work out." "Lily," Evan started to interrupt, but Sophia shook her head. "It's okay. She's protecting you, I get it." Sophia turned to look at Lily in the back seat. "I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect or that this is going to be easy. Your dad and I are both pretty broken in similar ways, but I'm trying to do right by him, and I'm going to keep trying even when it's hard." Lily studied Sophia for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, I can work with that." The tension eased slightly. At the restaurant, a quiet Italian place Evan had chosen specifically for its lack of scene, they settled into conversation that felt surprisingly natural. Lily asked Sophia about her work, about what it was like running a major company. Sophia asked Lily about school, about her interests, about her split time between Portland and San Francisco. "It's weird, but also kind of good," Lily explained. "Mom's world is all about appearances and connections. Dad's world is about hiding from all that. I get to see both sides, understand why people make the choices they make." Sophia smiled. "That's very mature of you." "I've had a lot of therapy." Lily said it matter-of-factly, without shame. "When your parents get divorced because they want fundamentally different things, you need help processing that." Evan felt a surge of pride at his daughter's self-awareness, her willingness to be honest without being cruel. Over dessert, Lily asked the question Evan had been dreading. "So what happens if this doesn't work out? If you two try and it's too hard?" Sophia didn't hesitate. "Then we'll have tried, and we'll both be better for having tried, even if it doesn't last forever." "But you're hoping it does last?" "I'm hoping we give it a real chance. Beyond that, I'm trying not to predict the future." Lily seemed satisfied with this answer. On the drive back to Evan's apartment, she leaned forward from the back seat. "I like her, Dad. She's good for you." After dropping Lily off, Evan and Sophia sat in her car outside his building. "That was intense." Sophia's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. "I've given presentations to boards of directors that were less nerve-wracking." "You did great. Lily doesn't give approval easily." "She's protecting you. I respect that." Sophia turned to face him. "But I also need you to know I meant what I said."
"I'm going to keep trying, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Evan pulled her close, kissed her properly for the first time since the wedding had exploded their careful bubble. When they broke apart, Sophia was smiling. "So, family dinner next week. You ready?" "Absolutely not. But I'm doing it anyway." The week passed in a blur of work and worry. Evan managed his investments from his apartment, fielding calls from companies that suddenly wanted FaceTime with Jay Vale now that his identity was public. He turned down every request, maintaining the boundaries that had kept him sane for 12 years. But he also started making small changes. He gave an interview to a tech blog, brief, carefully controlled, but still more public than anything he'd done since leaving Hartley Ventures. He attended a panel on ethical investing that Sophia had invited him to, sitting in the audience instead of hiding in anonymity. Baby steps toward being seen. Saturday evening, they drove to Catherine's house together. Lily sat in the back, unusually quiet. "You okay, sweetheart?" "Just thinking.
This is big, right? Meeting the family, officially? That means you two are serious. Sophia glanced back at her. Is that a problem? No. Want to make sure Dad knows what he's getting into. Lily met Evan's eyes in the rearview mirror. You're sure about this? Evan thought about the question, about all the reasons he should say no, should protect himself, should maintain distance. But he also thought about Tuesday mornings at Rosewood Cafe, about Sophia's laugh when she let her guard down, about the possibility that maybe hiding wasn't the same as safety. I'm sure I want to try. That's the best I can give you. Lily nodded. Then I'm in. Catherine answered the door with Diana and Marcus behind her. The presence of Marcus caught Evan off guard. He hadn't expected the man who'd started all this to be at a family dinner. But Marcus stepped forward immediately, hand extended. Evan, thank you for coming, and for not punching me, which I probably deserved. Evan shook his hand. We're past that. This must be Lily. Catherine's warmth seemed genuine as she addressed his daughter. Thank you for joining us. I know this is all very sudden. Lily handled it with the poise of someone twice her age. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Sterling. Inside, the dinner was less formal than lunch had been. Takeout from a local Thai restaurant spread across Catherine's kitchen counter, everyone serving themselves buffet style. As they ate, Marcus told the story of how he'd met Diana, carefully editing out the part where he'd been desperate and near bankruptcy. Diana added details about their courtship, about Marcus's persistence in pursuing her despite Catherine's initial skepticism. Wait, Lily interrupted. You didn't approve of Marcus at first? Catherine had the grace to look embarrassed. I had concerns about the speed of their relationship. They'd only known each other 8 months before getting engaged. But you approved of him more than you approved of Dad at the wedding? The observation landed like a stone in still water. Catherine set down her fork. You're right. And that was wrong of me. I judged your father based on appearances without knowing anything real about him. She met Evan's eyes. I'm trying to be better than that. Trying is good. Lily's tone softened slightly. But it's also really easy to slip back into old patterns when you're stressed or scared. Sophia reached under the table, found Evan's hand. Lily's right. We all have to keep choosing to be better every day, one decision at a time. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. Marcus asked Lily about school, discovered they both loved a particular book series, launched into an animated discussion about plot theories. Diana asked Sophia about a project at Sterling, got drawn into a technical discussion about zoning regulations and affordable housing requirements. Evan found himself talking to Catherine about Thomas, about the legacy he'd left, about the pressure of living up to someone larger than life. The truth is, I'll never be Thomas. Catherine's voice carried acceptance instead of grief. But I can honor what he built by actually following his principles instead of just protecting his name. That's what I'm trying to do now. That's all anyone can do. Try to be better than yesterday. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Lily gravitated toward the photos of Thomas, asking questions about the man she'd never meet. Catherine answered each one thoughtfully, sharing stories that made Thomas real instead of mythological. Evan watched his daughter absorb these stories, saw her measuring Catherine's sincerity against her natural skepticism. Finally, Lily turned to Catherine. Dad says you invited us to family dinners going forward. Like, regular thing? If you're both willing, yes. I'd like us to be family. Real family, not just people connected by who's dating whom. Lily looked at Evan, silently asking permission. He nodded. We can try. As they drove home that night, Lily was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she spoke. "They're trying, Dad. I think they really are." "I think so too." "But you're still scared." Evan glanced at his daughter in the rear-view mirror. "Terrified." "Good. Means you care enough for it to matter." Lily smiled. "Just don't let the fear make decisions for you. Let what you actually want make the decisions." 2 weeks later, Evan and Sophia sat in their corner booth at Rosewood Cafe on a Tuesday morning. The routine had become sacred again, a touchstone in the midst of everything changing. Sophia's laptop was open, but she wasn't working. Evan's book lay closed on the table. They were just sitting, existing in the same space like they had that first week. The barista approached with fresh coffee. "You two still doing this Tuesday-Thursday thing, even though you're actually dating now?" Sophia grinned. "Especially because we're dating. This is where it started." "Smart. Keep the thing that worked." The barista refilled their cups. "Also, for what it's worth, I called it back in week 2. Told my coworker you'd be together within a month." After she left, Evan reached across the table. Sophia placed her hand in his, the gesture now familiar but still significant. "I've been thinking about something." Evan's voice carried the weight of a decision made. "I want you to meet Rebecca, Lily's mom. She's part of my life whether I like it or not, and if we're doing this for real, you should understand that dynamic." Sophia squeezed his hand. "I'd like that, even though it sounds terrifying." "It will be. Rebecca can be intense, but she's also Lily's mother, and that matters." "When?" Lily suggested next weekend. She thought it would be good for everyone to just rip off the Band-Aid. Sophia laughed. "Your daughter is wiser than both of us." The cafe door opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in, looked around, spotted Evan. He approached with the confidence of someone used to getting what he wanted. "Jay Vale? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I have a startup that would be perfect for your portfolio." Evan held up a hand. "I don't take meetings at cafes or anywhere else without prior arrangement through my lawyer." The man blinked, clearly not used to rejection. "But this is a limited opportunity. If you could just hear the pitch." Sophia's voice cut through, calm but firm. He said no. "Please leave us alone." The man looked between them, finally registering that he'd intruded on something. He left, muttering about missed opportunities. After he was gone, Evan let out a breath he'd been holding. That's going to keep happening. People recognizing me, wanting access, pushing boundaries. Then we'll handle it. Together. Sophia's grip on his hand tightened. You're not alone in this anymore. You get to choose that now. Evan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw everything he'd been afraid of wanting for 12 years. Someone who saw him completely and stayed anyway. Someone willing to fight through the complications and the fear and the inevitable difficulties. Someone worth the risk of being seen. I love you. The words came out before he'd planned them, raw and honest and terrifying. Sophia's eyes widened, then softened. I love you too. Even though we're both disasters. Even though this is complicated. Even though we're probably going to mess this up 100 times before we get it right. Especially because of all that. They sat in Rosewood Cafe, hands linked across the table. Two people who'd spent years hiding, finally choosing to be found. The morning light filtered through the windows, coffee steamed between them, and for the first time in longer than Evan could remember, the future felt less like something to fear and more like something to build together.